I don't think Angel City is going to stop being kind of a tightrope team for a while, but I do think they're going to make it. I think Angel City is going to be a playoff team in 2025, but I don't think that they're going to be throwing away their principles anytime soon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of The Late Sub. I am your host, Claire Watkins. It is Wednesday, April 16th, and we are diving into what I believe to be one of the most dynamic storylines of the early NWSL season, Angel City. They're undefeated. We're seeing some separation at the top and the bottom of the table here in the NWSL, and this is the one team that I think has people raising their eyebrows a little bit. So let's dig into where they've been, what they're doing, and why I think that this could be a year where they actually make a bit of a postseason run. Let's dig in. So the NWSL returned this past weekend from the international break. We're now 4 match weekends in, which I actually think is a pretty good sample size to see how things are going. I've said this a lot. There are sort of these segments of the NWSL season, right? There's that first third. You have the big international break in the summer, which they'll do again this year for the Euros and other major international tournaments across the world. And then you kind of have the home stretch in the fall moving into playoffs. But I do think 4 games, pretty good sense of what's going on, which leads us to our major topic of today. Maybe just kind of to parachute us into where the NWSL is at. We are seeing similar separation at the top of the table versus the bottom of the table that we saw last year. There are 3 teams still undefeated. There are 4 teams kind of separating themselves. I think you can include Washington in that as well, despite the fact that they have taken 1 loss in the regular season this year so far. But the 3 undefeated teams in the NWSL right now are Orlando, Kansas City, and Angel City, actually. Orlando and Kansas City expected, right? Orlando did the double last year. They did Shield and Championship. Kansas City was right in the mix for that. Both teams have these MVP candidates. They have incredible attacks. They have good defenses. I think we're going to be seeing Orlando and Kansas City battle it out for trophies throughout the entire year. But the team that sticks out in a season thus far that is maybe struggling for, I said, like dynamic storylines, dynamic meaning moving up, moving down, changing and evolving. I think LA has stuck out to a lot of people as maybe the first real one to emerge so far in 2025. I'm going to start with a thesis here. We're going to do a counter thesis, and then we're going to discuss what we think is actually happening with Angel City. So maybe the thesis here: undefeated in 4 games under interim manager Sam Lady. They're scoring really well. They're keeping other attacks at bay as best as they possibly can. They're holding on to leads pretty well. Is the thesis here that after years of spinning their wheels, Angel City is getting serious about the future? Or is the counter thesis, this is just a good stretch and it will wear off, and Angel City might still be spinning their wheels this year? So let's talk about it. I want to get into Angel City kind of as a team, kind of the promise of the team, what we've seen on the pitch, what we've seen on the pitch recently, and what I think their prospects are for the rest of the year, while also just appreciating what we're seeing right now. Because as of right now, if you're looking for some must-watch TV in the NWSL outside of some of these other top teams, I do think Angel City is putting together a pretty good argument. Is it a surprise? Yes and no. So let's start with Angel City going back to their very first year. So they've only been around since 2022, and they've been incredibly successful off the pitch, right? This was this moment of California expansion into LA, into San Diego. Both of those teams have been successful off the pitch. They've got large fan bases. It was sort of this turning of the page that maybe ended up not being quite so much turning of the page of some of the real lows of 2021 in terms of the organizational issues in the NWSL and the abuses suffered across the league and some of this player rights movement that came in through the league. There was this idea that maybe these SoCal teams could come in and do things very differently, focusing on LA specifically. They also came in with a lot of high profile investors, lots of celebrities coming to games, and that's still true, but like lots of celebrities coming to games, it really felt like sort of a glitzy glamour Hollywood type team. They have the big fan base. They have very successful sponsorships and partnerships. They to this day still have, I think, the highest evaluation in the NWSL. They're right up there in American women's sports, though obviously some of the booming evaluations for WNBA teams. I'm curious to see how Angel City continues to compete with those. And there was this off the pitch messaging from the very beginning that they had the mindset of like doing things right, success through community, speaking to LA, being the kind of team that this huge market deserved, and really kind of showing the NWSL what sort of a new modern era, large pocketed, large market team could be. But as we know, that hasn't always been followed up by consistency on the field. Very lofty standards to live up to. I want to be very clear. And I do think that Angel City has had a lot of really important successes on the business side of women's soccer. And I think actually a lot of teams in the NWSL could learn a thing or two from what Angel City has been able to accomplish. But the project on the field hasn't been quite as strong. They've only made one playoff appearance in their entirety of the club's existence, though again, not too many years, but they've struggled to get above the playoff line at the end of the year. The organization itself has been flagged multiple times for some rule issues, some circumvention of league rules, sometimes made sort of an example of by the league office. And even that one playoff appearance that they did make was sort of due to this wild decision day result 2 years ago that catapulted the team into their only postseason appearance in this like really wacky game where they just shellacked Portland in decision day 2 years ago. Organizationally, if you look at the front office, they're on their third coach, who is an interim right now. I mentioned Sam Lady. That was following the firing of Becky Tweed. Becky Tweed herself was an interim manager following the firing of inaugural manager Freya Coombe. You've seen movement with their general managers, original general managers. Eni Aluko left the team kind of as tensions rose with sort of, again, this middling, struggling with competition of their first 2022 season. The next general manager, Angela Hookleys, parted ways with the club prior to this season, but that was after being kind of, again, publicly made an example of due to a determination by the league that they had violated the salary cap. That censorship was also passed along to club president Julie Ehrman. The team was recently sold to new majority owner Willow Bay. People might know she's married to Bob Iger. There's a lot going on there in terms of, again, sort of the Hollywood element of the big pockets behind the team. But the resources themselves have not necessarily led to a very high functioning front office and therefore a pretty inconsistent product on the pitch. Former Portland and Washington manager Mark Parsons is now in charge of soccer operations. He is very well regarded in the NWSL still. I mean, he is someone who, after leaving Portland, has had middling results as a coach, or up and down results, let's say, as a coach. I still think he is very well regarded in the NWSL as an executive. He, I think, is hopefully there to bring a stabilizing effect for them. But despite all of the marketing, Angel City has this question mark hanging over them of how long will it take for them to kind of put it all together on the field due to some of the settling of the organizational issues that they've had. And they can kind of live up to the marketing and live up to what the successes they've already had on the business side. They've had some issues with injuries. They signed Kristen Press as their first huge marquee signing. And through obviously no fault of her own, she's been injured for much of that tenure. I think it's remarkable and a testament to, again, the committed resources of Angel City that she's been able to return to the pitch this year. Some of the other leaders that they brought into the locker room have also struggled with injuries and absences. Ali Riley has been hurt. Sydney LaRue is currently on mental leave after signing an extension with the team at the end of last year. Early signings haven't always stuck around very long. You look at the really short-term signings in the past of Julie Ertz or Amandine Henry. Those were not really like long-term planning in any sort of way. And the boost that the team got from those long-term or those short-term contracts didn't really have a ripple effect into the future. They have had Vanessa Gilles on loan for many, many months now. Probably unlikely that she's going to return anytime soon. You've seen other kind of league mainstays, Paige Nielsen, Rocky Rodriguez, just players that haven't stuck around super long, which isn't always the worst thing in the world. You see a lot of high turnover in the NWSL, but with a very early team in its lifespan, I do think that it can hamstring long-term progress to just not have that consistency. And there is that question mark of like all of those names, those are good players. Why were they signed for the durations they were signed? Why didn't it work? And what does that mean for what they're able to accomplish going forward? They've also struggled with positional gaps. Their scoring has always been very solid. They've always actually had not a lot of trouble scoring, but they have trouble holding on to leads. It was very expansion team in the beginning, where I think Bay FC now, even to this day, is a good example of what that looks like in an expansion side, where you get kind of these exciting attacking players. You're going to we're going to go score goals no matter what. The product's going to be good, even if we don't always win games in our first year. But that has kind of continued as their ethos going into, their fourth year of existence. And I think People are looking for more stabilization in what they're able to accomplish in kind of controlling games. Despite their success this season, I don't think we're quite seeing that just yet. But I think they haven't taken that next step of, okay, you're going to go to an Angel City game and you're going to have a good time because it's going to be end to end. You're going to score goals. You might concede some goals. There's going to be kind of these big, big moments, and it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. And I do actually think you can sell fans on that for a while. But with everything else that's going so right for Angel City, I think fans are starting to want a little bit more. And so the dropped points have continued to be an issue for them throughout the last couple of years. This is something that Theo Lloyd-Hughes, who's a great soccer reporter down in Texas, pulled out sort of in the drop points by Angel City year to year. In 2022, they lost 14 points from a winning position. In 2023, they lost 12 points from a winning position. In 2024, they lost 18 points from a winning position. So far in 2025, they've only lost 2 in 4 games. I think the idea of being able to close things out by controlling the soccer match is the final piece for them. They did finish 2024. Last year was tough for them. As I mentioned, they fired Becky Tweed mid-season. They finished 2024 in 12th place out of 14 teams with a negative 13-point differential. This year so far, 8 points in 4 games plus 3 goal differential, sitting in 4th place. So what's different? Let's turn the corner here. So maybe to wrap up this part of the breakdown for Angel City, a lot to like organizationally, some question marks in the front office that I think have been issues for them, a product on the pitch that got people interested, but isn't necessarily good long-term strategy for having fans stick around. So what have they done? Angel City has always been pretty aggressive about the players that they want, sometimes to a fault. Sometimes they give up too much to get what they want, and sometimes those players don't always work out. But they've gone to kind of a tried and true strategy in American sports. If things aren't working, if you're spinning your wheels, get younger. If you're a little bit volatile, right? If you can score goals, but you concede them, people like seeing that from a young team more than they like seeing that from a team full of established veterans who maybe you have higher expectations of or think that they can execute more elaborate tactics or strategies from the coaching staff. And again, they're aggressive about the players that they want, but they've gotten a huge hit this year from a player who's already been pretty good, but has taken a huge next step. I'm going to say a name that I've said on this podcast before. I think you're hearing her name all around the league is Alyssa Thompson. She's their forward. She's a winger for them. She's fast. She's good on the ball. She's got a desire to go to goal that really sets defenses back. She can exploit space really nicely. Even just this year, her passing has improved. Her calmness in front of the goal has improved. And Angel City did give up quite a bit to get her. It was a big splashy move in 2023. They traded up to get the number 1 pick, selected her directly out of high school. A player like that is going to be a work in progress, just a work in progress, just due to her age. She makes the U.S. World Cup roster in 2023 due to some injuries in the squad, maybe a little bit too much too soon for her. She's left off the U.S. Olympic roster in 2024. She has actually said that was not bad for her. It was very motivating. It gave her a chance to really dig into her club season, scores 5 goals with a struggling Angel City in 2024. And now she's got 3 goals in 4 games in 2025. She's the second youngest NWSL player to hit 10 goals and 10 assists in her career. She's more poised. She's getting into dangerous areas. Teams are having trouble accounting for her, despite knowing that she is their offensive focal point at this moment. And we're seeing it on the international stage as well. She's taking a huge step forward with the U.S. This feels like when Angel City made this gamble of giving up resources to go get Thompson from a very young age, knowing that it wasn't going to be all put together right away. They're finally seeing the dividends of that in a true fashion. And that is very exciting. Because if there's one thing a team like Angel City needs, is they need some of these big swings to hit. And I think if you do enough of these big swings, you will eventually get there. And she's leading the way. Like, she's at this point kind of a veteran for a young team that's figuring things out quickly. Every goal scorer for Angel City this season has been 23 years old or younger. You've got Thompson, you've got midfielder Kennedy Fuller, Riley Tiernan, Macy Hodge. They've got other key young players. You're seeing Alyssa's sister, Giselle Thompson, get worked into the team both on the club and for country. She, again, little sister. This is a young player who's going to continue to develop, but obviously you're seeing the talent right away. Their goalkeeper, Angelina Anderson, has gotten some U.S. interest. They recently traded for young defender Savvy King, who went very high in the final NWSL draft. There's a lot there. If not, every player here plays for LA forever. That also isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. Those are assets to kind of like, if you have player movements, if you're able to execute trades, that I know we need player pickup on the trades, but there are assets there. I think Emma Vignola is another player that's been very good for them. She's young and she just needs to kind of get her injury woes behind her. And so it's a pretty classic, again, story in American sports, which is if things aren't working, you need to be looking to build from the ground up, not necessarily from the top down. Angel City has gotten a lot younger and these players are good. And they're playing with a natural skill level that, if honed properly, can turn into something very scary very quickly. I also think the team has kind of quietly stabilized with the more middle of career signings. I think the signing of Sarah Gordon, which was one of their first, has really played out for them very well. Gordon is one of the most consistent defenders in an admittedly stretched back line. I think re-signing Claire Emsley over the offseason was a huge get for the team after a bad season. I think that Emsley was one of their brightest stars last year in the attack. She has the experience to, I think, be more of a leader on the team, which is very, very helpful for them. They're hopefully going to be getting Japanese international June Endo back soon. She suffered a pretty rough injury last year, but that's a player that you hope that they can get into the attack, keep adding that width, keep kind of combining with Thompson. Katie Zellum, I think, was a good pickup for them. I think they're still kind of figuring out how to best utilize her. Press, like I said, is coming back and hopefully will continue to get her feet underneath her. I do think at the very least that veteran presence, that experience has been very, very good, specifically for Thompson. I think Thompson plays well when Press is on the field with her. So you're seeing that stabilization where they're not stuck just with like these big name players that aren't sticking around or just older players that aren't as effective as they used to be. They've got a young core. They're building sort of through that middle tier of players, sort of in the middle of their careers with a little bit more experience. And it's turning into wins or results, let's say, which leads me to my final question. This is the great thesis counter thesis, right? Going back to the top. Are they figuring it all out? Is Angel City getting serious? Or is this just a good run of form and it will settle? Not going to surprise anybody. I think the answer is a little bit of both. These are one of the 2, 3, 4 teams that have stuck out at the top of the table. Angel City, as we said, is getting that separation. I think that this season is rife for a team like Angel City to be able to make a run. I feel similarly about some other teams like Seattle, maybe even Houston. Hopefully, I think that would be cool. Louisville, that would be cool. I think that we're going to see the bottom drop out pretty starkly at the bottom of the table, and we're going to see a couple teams really soar to the top. And that does allow for some space in the middle for a team like Angel City, if they keep picking up these points, to be able to get above that playoff line again. Who they land on as head coach will be key. I think that they're doing well under Lady, but you can't form a team identity under an interim like that. I think right now they're just going out with a lot of youth and chutzpah and quality on the ball and mental focus, and that's getting the results that they've been looking for. They need to keep cultivating those veteran touchstones for young players to continue to develop the mentality necessarily to hold on to leagues in this league. But I will say that I think the results also are going to come back down to earth. I think if you look at some of the underlying stats of Angel City performances, there are some weaknesses there, I guess. They don't really hold possession or have much of a compact possession structure. When they do have the ball, a lot of their possession is held by their defense. They make a lot of nice progressive passes into the final third, but it's not really being developed through the midfield. Those passes are being developed through the back line, which can be an issue for turnovers. I think, again, just sort of stabilizing, solidifying that midfield is going to be huge for them for continued success. They've been outperforming their XG, which is the goals expected based on the quality of chances that they're taking. So, for example, like a tap in right in front of the goal line is going to be a very high XG chance. A worldie from outside the box is going to be a low XG chance. And they've been outperforming those chances that they're creating, which means that they're scoring more goals than their XG expects them to score based on the quality of each shot, which usually means there's a hot shooting streak, which sometimes means that those streaks end. Thompson's hot streak is a large factor here, the way that she's been playing. There's no reason to think she can't continue with that incredible streak that she's on, but it's a question of her usage is very heavy. That can be countered as teams get to see Angel City play together more and more as the season goes on. There isn't a game this season, though, where LA's opponent hasn't compiled more XG than LA, and that doesn't tell the whole story. But that's not sustainable for an entire season. That means that they are getting through on moments of brilliance. It means that they are getting through on chemistry and mental fortitude, and it's a long season, and those kinds of things can start to slip as you get tired and other teams get used to the way that you play. But I'll finish with this. I don't think Angel City is going to stop being kind of a tightrope team for a while. They're up on that tightrope. They're high up. There's going to be swings one direction, swings other directions. There are going to be stressful moments, but I do think they're going to get to the other side. I think Angel City, with what they're building, is a playoff team in this league this season. I think that they are a really interesting prospect for any coach coming in. They're young, they're talented, they're bought in, they have high resources, they've just moved into a new training facility. This is a team that I think you would want to take over if you feel like you have the in-office support to do so. I'm very curious to see who Parsons hires in that search. I think they were saying mid-season is kind of what they're looking at there. But I do think they're going to make it. I think Angel City is going to be a playoff team in 2025, but I don't think that they're going to be throwing away their principles anytime soon. So LA fans, you get ready, hold on to your hats. It's going to be a wild ride, but I do think that Angel City is going to make significant gains in terms of their results this year versus last year, and probably even in their entire history as a club. So this has been this week's edition of The Late Sub. I am your host, Claire Watkins. Shout out to producer extraordinaire Parker Fenton. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. We're going to be doing some bigger picture stuff this year. We're going to be talking teams. We're going to be talking to histories, futures, performances, a little analysis, a little personnel. Hopefully everybody enjoys some of this sort of deeper picture stuff into what's happening in the NWSL, US Women's National Team, and beyond. And we will be back with you next week with another cool concept of what we're going to be talking about, probably still NWSL focused because there's a lot to get into there. Thanks y'all for listening, and we will catch you next time.